All of it. You should put all of the effort into rubrics. The reason I say that is because rubrics and the criteria within rubrics are the most important link between the instruction and valid and reliable assessment. So you can be the best instructor in the world, but if your rubric is not clear and the students don't know what they're being assessed on, you're going to get a million different things, because interpretation is very open-ended. So your instruction, I'm sure you've discussed the backwards design model already. So the way that you build a great rubric is from the outcome. So you have to clearly say, what outcome do I have to meet? And as I'm sure you know, some of those outcomes aren't worded in very student-friendly language. You can get away with it a lot more at the high school level, like grade 11 and 12. But for the young ones, you have to first convert that outcome into student-friendly language. As soon as it says, I am going to know this, I am going to do this, whatever the outcome is, that is your starting point. And whatever the verbs are in that outcome, that's really what the student needs to be able to do. So for instance, to just borrow from English, because I'm one trick pony, if their objective is to write an essay and argue a certain position, defend a position, let's say, two of the big parts of that rubric are going to be writing and defending, because those are the verbs that the rubric is asking of me. I'll just go back to PE because it's drastically different from the English curricula. If a kid is asked to send and receive, throwing, right? Throwing should be on my rubric because that is the verb that they are asked to do. So building it out of those verbs of the rubric is definitely the starting point. And then it depends how far down the unit a rubric is. So there are only a few things that I would probably carry through from the start to the finish, but your rubrics can evolve as you move through a unit, depending what you're working on. So I'm thinking of if you're scaffolding writing, for example, you would start with some more syntax heavy objectives in earlier assignments perhaps, but towards the end, the syntax is worth less or nothing. And it's more about construction of the argument, where you have certain things positioned within an essay. So the way that it develops as well is important, but building out of the outcomes and the indicators is a must, because the criteria need to make certain that every student is meeting the outcome if they follow that rubric. And so what you're going to find is that, kids know as soon as you give them the rubric, like if you give them an assignment and it doesn't have a rubric, kids now, like in today's classrooms, will say, is there a rubric for this? And if they don't ask, their parents are going to ask, where's the rubric for this? How do they know what they're being graded on? So everything that you summatively assess anyway has to have a rubric, and it shouldn't be given to them with their assessment. It should be given to them with the instructions. You should say, here's how you do the assignment. Here's a sample, a demonstration. Here's the rubric. And what you'll notice is they put the rubric here and they put the assignment here, and they're looking off the rubric all the time, using it as a checklist. And if you're teaching them to do that, you're setting them up for success, because they're learning to the outcome, right? You've built that out of the outcome. Your instructions are built out of the rubric, which are built out of the outcome. Therefore, the student's learning is now built out of the instruction, which is directly connected back to the outcomes that you built the rubric out of. So you're constantly giving yourself that sort of reassurance that everything you're doing is to the curriculum, which is your job, right? If you're not teaching to the curriculum, you're not doing your job. Not totally anyways. Another great way to build rubrics, and I wouldn't do this all the time because it might be time consuming, but involve the students. Have them help you build the criteria for a rubric. So if you tell them, here's the outcome we need to meet today, here are 10 ways that we can meet this outcome, what are the 4 or 5 that we think are the best for this assignment? What are the 4 or 5 criteria that we think are appropriate to meeting this outcome, and why? So involving the kids in building the rubrics is an awesome way, again, to get them to buy in, to invest in their learning. If they feel like they're a part of making and developing their learning, they're way more inclined to buy in to do the learning, right? Because if they've been a part of it from step 1, they're now, like, you've removed that step between them doing the assignment and them seeing what the final goal is in the rubric. Instead, they're looking at the rubric and building their way down to the assignment. And so they can sort of see the learning in the rearview mirror and remember being there. So yeah, involving them in developing rubrics is also a great way, but that has to be done very carefully, because it takes a lot of guidance. It has to be very teacher driven until they know exactly what rubric making is all about. So you have to sort of have it pre-made for them and just allow them the choice of picking criteria, that kind of thing.